we are live.
Thank you. Thanks for telling
me. Are we live?
We are live. Yeah. I had to
No
make sure that was
impromptu-
super clear because Squid obviously.
Well,
sounds
yeah,
the
but you
way.
do have to do like the Joe Rogan, candid start to the conversation.
Yeah, so it's 5,
whatever,
4,
like you're already
3.
talking.
Vu just did a good tweet, which was he's
That's a
picked up
lie.
a bunch of the streamers from the ground, like the what are they called, and the confetti,
Yeah.
and he's auctioning them off.
Well, there you go.
That is quite a good tweet. That is a very good tweet. Yo, Betway Esports liked my tweet. Shout out Betway. They follow me? Excuse me?
We're finding out
How long
some
ago
real
was
important
that?
stuff.
Yeah.
I have no idea. When the fuck did they follow me?
What are
I've
they
only
even
just
tweeting out
followed
about?
Freya, so-
Which tweet? I
The
thought
the
shoot on
numbers
head.
will be epic.
Gotcha.
By the
That
way, I'm 1 for 1 in Pick'ems officially. Diamond coin, only coin I've ever received because I've never done any of this. I think Pick'ems are kind of shit, to be honest. But diamond coin, I'm the recipient of 1.
You know who's the recipient of something made of gold instead of diamond? Is obviously
Is it
s1mple.
also me? Well,
No,
it's not me.
it's
Okay.
s1mple, obviously. Come on. Although it might have been made out of clay. We don't know. I think they were out of clay and they had to use gold.
Yeah, there was no
instead.
more clay,
There's
so they had to give
just
him the
no-
gold. Yeah.
Yeah. So no pyramids then. But s1mple did get his actual major W, which honestly, it was so obvious going into this tournament that they were the clear favorites that when I saw that they won earlier today, I was watching them win. I still thought like, wait, am I like, do I have to pinch myself to make sure I'm not dreaming? Because like, it was so obvious that they should have won that I, in my head, thought surely they just like lose in quarters or something. Like something horrible happens to them and they don't even make it, and it's super disappointing. And you know what? We almost did have a third map. It was almost a close one, and instead it will go down in history as doubtlessly the most dominant major victory, just on the basis of the fact that they never dropped a map. And the closest they came was in the grand finals in double overtime, all thanks to Niko choking, which we can talk a little bit about, I'm sure.
It was almost like boring to predict that Na'Vi were going to win it because it was like the road it can only be so perfect. Like how can this possibly all just line up so well for Na'Vi? Like they bring in a new guy who just slots in really well and he gets like crazy almost MVP level performances from him at his first ever major. Like the stories were all there were like, yeah, it felt honestly, like I'm not going to pretend like I had the take. I thought Bit was going to just go missing when it came to the finals, and that just never happened. Like that Na'Vi journey was just clear sailing from the start, and they didn't seem like they were even under much pressure. Like they were just kind of kicking back and chilling very often.
That is fair,
I think although G2 looked good throughout the tournament and whatnot, I think when they like absolutely dumpstered Gambit in the semi-final, like the hard work is done, and then surely you've got to win it from there.
You think that, but obviously G2 looked way better than Gambit looked.
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
particular
for
one,
sure,
right?
for sure.
So like maybe
in
the
terms
mental
of-
game. Are you thinking? What are you thinking there?
Yeah, the overcoming and the obviously I wasn't on the show yesterday, so we didn't get a chance. But I know Jamie and I talked a little bit during the day that every great team, has a rivalry, has a team that they have to overcome and eventually like supersede. That goes for kind of anything competitive, really. There's always one team that seems to have your number, regardless of how good you are against everyone else. And obviously, for Na'Vi throughout the year, that's been Gambit. G2 have actually, of course, the story coming into the final, G2 have not really been a challenge for Na'Vi. So the fact that they nearly lose Nuke does make it quite exciting, to be fair.
Well, it was first Gambit, then was first Vitality, then Gambit, then now G2, right? Where like
I
they
suppose.
always meet them in the finals. So those are all the regional rivals. I suppose like Heroic's the only one that's missing, but
in terms of the
G2 can deal
past
with them
6
handily.
months or something, the storylines going into it, they basically did have the anime protagonist, I think was the quote from Thorin. Like that was their kind of run storyline they were going to be writing, is they have to go through everything that held them back. Of course, sans Heroic, because you could say G2 didn't really hold them back in the other finals because they were just breezed past, especially in those best of 5 finals where it always went 3-0 in favor of Na'Vi. It wasn't even a competition. So yeah, I think it was honestly just from a narrative perspective, this makes sense. It does ring true as like s1mple finally got his major. We finally say the GOAT, like no more questions asked. Is he actually the GOAT? Like always in my mind, always passing the eye test, always statistically like a huge anomaly. And now at this major, having what, a 1.47 HLTV rating for just the whole tournament. Like,
yeah,
I mean, Jesus Christ, man. Like that is some of the most insane work I think any player's ever done. It's the highest in major history, was a stat thrown around on the desk. I haven't vetted that, but I would imagine it's true, even though they did kind of mislead me earlier. And I almost tweeted that it was the first time we would see Ancient today, because the desk did bring that up, but obviously we didn't. We saw Ancient in the playoffs earlier, in the first quarterfinal, actually. So just long, people just forget about VP and Heroic because they're not in the final, which, whatever, makes sense. But Squid, do you have any takes?
I mean, s1mple just got 72 kills in the grand final of a major that didn't even go to 3 maps.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much all that can be said, right? I think overall, pretty entertaining grand final, especially that second map. Ancient did sort of look a little bit lackluster when we got into the second half, and sort of like G2 start falling apart, Niko going for all of these sort of like crazy pushes every single round and getting punished for it. Obviously, like that massive like Deagle choke, if you're gonna call it that, where he fails the headshot there on like onto Hut. So we've got some really good moments there. No graffiti moment, unfortunately, but like sort of overall pretty solid grand final, like relatively okay tournament.
Yeah, the story was already there that like they're leading, and then Niko has this flank, and then they just don't pull through. And then like, would you have expected that it would be Niko with a deagle when that's one of his signature weapons?
Yeah.
People always used to talk about the Niko deag and how deadly that was, and now someone's not even fucking looking at him. He can't get the shot. Like that will probably haunt him, because that could have just closed the map right there. And then maybe we still have this conversation. We don't even actually get to have this conversation at this time, because the major would still be playing.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
What I will say, I think that could actually be your graffiti moment. Do some kind of like Neo, because it was s1mple that he was shooting. So I don't know, some kind of like Neo-esque dodging the bullets. Or obviously that's not how it's gone, but that
you could draw the outline that Niko did, and then have the quick like sort of rotation angle or whatever. Like the fact that he flicked on, because it was, when we saw it from s1mple's perspective, it did look like a real nutty shot. So the only issue is that secures OT, which later gets s1mple the W on Nuke without them dropping the streak, without them dropping a map in the whole tournament, which is all impressive. But just that one kill, it's impactful because Niko didn't get it and was fragged instead. That's why it's impactful. So yeah, that is definitely, like, he's got to be head in hands today. Like, he's got to be totally wrecked, because like, just like he would have been, it actually hurts way worse than if he flubs that heroic 1v2 situation where he was like, I think it was him and Amanek on Inferno, technically a 2-on-2, but he had both of the players lined up and they just awkwardly walked down bottom banana and he whiffed the sort of kills. So
yeah,
and had bomb, obviously. So that was like a huge disaster. If he loses there, if it goes 2-1 in favor of heroic, that hurts a lot less than almost forcing a map 3 in a grand final of a major and really threatening, like bringing it onto Mirage, your home turf, so to speak. That hurts a lot less.
The odds are already stacked against you. Like, they've won 17 in a row. Like, they're on a winning streak. It's supposed to be their guaranteed map win. Like, if you're gonna perform at any time and prove that you can be a clutch player on the big stage, that was the time to just show that same level of consistency that Niko has had all tournament. Like, he has played out of his fucking mind this tournament. And in the finals, we actually see a more lackluster performance than any of the group stage. But it is against the hardest team in the world.
Jamie,
sure.
You said that if we got the streak broken and that's how G2 win the major, it's probably one of the best of all time. Did you not?
I did say that. I still think that that's a pretty solid grand final, all in all.
Yeah,
definitely one of the better ones that we've seen. Remember, how many blowout grand finals have we had at previous majors where we do get sort of like an underdog sneak their way into a final? Like, the one that really pops into my head is sort of like the Liquid SK grand final, where sort of like Train is absolutely lackluster and sort of like every map in that series just isn't much fun whatsoever. Avant-Garde's another one. Like, you've got a lot of grand finals that sort of shaped up like this, especially in the last sort of like 4 or 5 years, right? The first couple of majors, you've got really exciting grand finals, almost like from start to finish of the tournament, really amazing matches, messy CS, and sort of like since the Astralis era, I would say, that's been closed down. You haven't had nearly as much of that sort of variance on the server, so the favorites do usually win it out on the big stage. And also the underdogs seem to sort of lose steam when they get to this grand final.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the case today, right? Like Ancient was a little bit of a flat map. It felt like between maps 1 and 2, like shit, we're gonna get another sort of like we're going to get another boring grand final. Like, this isn't going to live up to anyone's expectations. We waited 2 years and this is what the final is going to be. And then Nuke like absolutely delivers. Like, that is, by the way, one of the most sort of like, that will be one of the most legendary comebacks of all time, even though it's a CT side of Nuke 14-7, where like if everything sort of goes right, you're like, it's not the same as having a 14-7 deficit on the T side of Dust 2, let's say, or the T side of Nuke, or sort of like any other position on any other map. Like, we've seen this so many times. I feel like that is going to go down as one of the sort of like legendary comebacks. And what a way for Na'Vi to do it as well on Nuke. Like, that was the map that sort of like they've built their name on, this massive streak. It was about to be broken, and they're just like at this point in time totally unbeatable on this particular turf. I think that there are so many sort of like exciting strands that you can pull from it.
Yeah. Well, one big notable factor is the fact that s1mple did kind of start a bit quiet, a little bit on Ancient, but especially on Nuke T side. Like, fell very flat, and the fact that they're coming back, yes, it's on CT side, yes, it's a CT sided meta, but you don't expect them to come back. It was 14-7, literally double the scoreline, and it ended in double OT in favor of Na'Vi. Like, that's a plot line you've got to be able to wrap your head around, and it's going to take a little bit.
But it's not like you expect your like, the reason Na'Vi are so good on Nuke is the fact that not only is their T side very organized in like how they run their system, but also just like you get on CT and you just can't do anything when you go up against like Bid at ramp or s1mple literally running all over the fucking map. Like, these are things that are hard to account for because there's always that X factor potential from these players that seems to be a part of the way that they run their defense. Like, they're happy to have a few moving pieces in that respect, where honestly, G2, man, like their CT had like a firm game plan going into a map that they weren't expected to win. Like, they were constantly pressuring the Na'Vi T side. They actually just couldn't really set up for any of these late round plans. We saw great performances from Jax and Amanek and Nexa. You know, the supportive elements of G2 more so than just Hunter and Niko, which was the talking point for most of the tournament. So it's great that it wasn't just like a full flat. I agree with what Jamie's trying to get across, is that even though it actually seems to be like a trend for like the past 4 or 5 majors, I think with maybe the exception of one, that we've had like underdogs basically go to the finals and then just completely fall off. Like, yeah, G2 really showed up where they needed to.
That's probably the biggest story overall, right? Is the idea that G2 actually did make it competitive, and we were all on this show earlier saying it's probably not be 2-0, it's probably not even close, and I thought there'd be one close.
It still was.
It still was 2-0, but I think it was definitely a lot closer. I mean, literally one round, one non-whiff from Niko, and then you know, we get a third map. And actually, honestly, who knows what happens if Na'Vi have to come back in the third map with the psychological turmoil of losing your, you know, having your Nuke streak be broken, going on to Mirage, which is a map that both teams can play, and especially Niko, who would have had the ability to close out the map in the first place had he not choked there. Like, that's a pretty big calling card, if you will, right? And also, I think another thing to note is that, like, I don't know what you guys think about s1mple's performances in previous majors, but I do feel like he may, like, you might be able to make an argument that he maybe choked or underperformed at the very least a little bit in some of those past majors, and that's obviously not what happened here. So I think it's like there's one argument of the side where somebody is going to say it would have been more legit for s1mple if he won a major, you know, in more of a parity era where there wasn't some very obvious dominant team, and he like carried some worse version of Na'Vi to the finals and managed to also take the whole thing against like Prime Astralis or something crazy, right? But you have to remember as well that like it's not just that his teammates are playing better and therefore he's able to, you know, win trophies. It's he's playing lights out even in the most high stakes game. There must have been some element of like maturity over time and development as a player and as a human to get him to this position, which I think is a really nice sort of long term, if we're looking at his career from the sort of rose tinted goggles, right? We're going to be very, very sort of, I think we'll treat s1mple very well as far as like writing narratives go or whatever. Like, he's going to be regarded as the GOAT for a while. And now the only question is, can he keep it going for even longer? Because it really defies expectations that he's lasted this long, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, didn't we? In the sense that, like, if he had won the crazy carry his team through the major final or whatever, he probably wouldn't have taken some time to like point out his teammates and have the sort of most hype moment of his winner's interview actually be when he was like, my teammates are champions,
Like
and
these
he gets
guys
a
are
bit louder.
champions, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think he would have, made a point of doing that. I don't think, obviously, you wouldn't be like, oh, my team was shit, it was all me. But like, this time around, and I think that's kind of the key difference here in the final as well, if we're to look at it from like a deeper level, is the fact that Na'Vi, you've got a bit looking good or whatever, but Electronic's still kind of there, and their team makes a bit of sense when you look at the way that they approach rounds, when you look at the way that the scoreboard is weighted and that kind of thing. I still feel that G2 suffer massively from like this who does what within that team. Niko goes kill, Hunter is meant to be the second guy that does that, and then you have like a weird amalgam, and it might be a basic thing and obviously not watched it under a microscope, but just from the quote unquote like eye test, and then just from looking at sort of the post game stats, that G2 team still suffers from the same sort of issues where I don't when it gets panicked, when shit hits the fan, when you are, in a 13-10 and then 14, it was 14-7, right? Yeah, it was 14-7. When it gets to like 12 or whatever it may be, like, on the opposite side, I don't think that they have as much of a backup plan as like Na'Vi clearly did. We talked about it, CT comeback or whatever. It's definitely easier to do, and it's on Nuke, and they're great on the CT side of Nuke, but they still have a lot more trust. Whereas I think like Niko, it's going to be the big round. Niko like fluffing it up is going to affect the way that they call, the way that they move, rather than okay, forget about it, whatever it happens, let's run this setup, or whatever. So I just think like G2. To come off of that point, there are some kind of issues, and we also touched on the fact that they might even have said that some changes need to happen unless they like win the whole thing. And I, for one, still think that some changes do need to happen.
For sure.
So I have been practicing some analysis, and I hope to kind of bag like a DreamHack close qualifier of my own, to be honest, as an analyst. So I thought I'd give it a go right
Here we
now.
go.
Jax is 62.4 ADR in the grand final, 63.2 KAST, and a 0.82 rating. He's minus 12. Amanek 56.1 ADR. 70.6 KST and a 0.91.
You're hired.
rating.
You did it. You know what? I think that's a real convincing. Yeah, real convincing.
Yeah, I was thinking that I'd cast with one of the staples, cast with somebody like JRT or something.
Yeah.
Hunter was 72.3 ADR and a 64.7 KST with the 0.93 rating.
Do you have a deeper point to this, or is it just the ownage of certain North American casts? Okay, I didn't know if there was some leading here. Like you're going to say, and actually, though, unironically, looking at these stats,
look at this stat.
Yeah, of course, of course he hasn't. Yeah, of course he hasn't. Okay, I think so. Something, Skriv, you weren't actually here during the conversation we had yesterday, where AnThran was sort of running cover for G2's roster and making I think a seemingly convincing argument for somebody who's only really invested in CSGO, or the CSGO side of G2 at least, and isn't necessarily familiar with how Ocelot, for example, actually operates.
Yeah.
So you have a bit more, I would say, like cross-game knowledge in this sense, similar to myself, where we both at least have seen Ocelot's moves in League of Legends space, right? I'm having a guess here, and I'm assuming you've seen sort of how he's operated there. Do you agree with my take then, that he's actually probably going to blow up this roster, at least remove a couple of pieces, might even make the crazy move of potentially removing Niko based on like how he's handled Reckless and his League of Legends roster and some of the other ones? Or do you think he'll be a little bit more mild-mannered? I'm just wondering where you're sort of coming down there, because you said you think there need to be changes. So I'm curious where you think those are going to come from.
Yeah. I think you keep the core three, like the Bolt, Nexa, Hunter, and Niko. In terms of what like he's gonna, I actually don't think so, and it's not necessarily predicated off the back of maybe it's a different game or whatever. I just think by the kind of logic of the fact that it didn't work very well for them with the G2 League of Legends team. They went from semi-finalists, maybe finalists in the last Worlds. I can't quite remember. Like,
they were finalists at one point, and then semis.
They definitely were with that kind of super team. It was either last year or the year before, to not making it to Worlds this year. So I think that the kind of big change mentality, sell off some players and whatnot. Probably not going to happen in CS. I think also there is the fact that finances come in quite massively there. The fact that Perks, gets sold in the prime of his career to Cloud9, he is worth, far more than any of the players on the G2 team just by the nature of how much money is in League compared to how much money is in CS. He also then went on to have like a shit season with Cloud9 as far as I'm aware. So, I think they need to be careful not to do anything too crazy, but I would probably sort a solid and consistent AWPer. Keep Jax. He seemed to have a dig deep kind of moment and whatnot in that series. Maybe keeps the team together from a glue sense, and all that. You don't know what they do behind the scenes, that old classic argument. But AWPing wise, I think they need to sort that.
It's quite hard to remove somebody like Niko. He's somebody with a 1.13 rating, a 67.6 KST, and an 88.3 ADR.
I'm just going to quickly jump in here. Give me a sec. I'm going to fuck around with my microphone because all you guys have got your mics coming in from underneath and it looks like way better. So I'm going to try and do that.
Here we go. All right, some live.
Wow,
You guys
this is the
talk
first.
Oh no,
first
I'll do my repositioning impression. This is what they do. This is the real tip. They go like this. They tell you to put your camera way off so you can barely hear the voice. That's what every single commentator on Relog does. That's what you'll have to do tomorrow morning. They'll tell you, get it off the screen, put it like miles away from your face. Just put the mic at the other side of the room and just kind of shout into it.
Is that what you had to do?
What they do is they put the microphone up above their heads, and then they have the other microphone just a mile away.
I can't actually remember what your setup was when you were doing the Dom Casts bit. Was it something similar to that? Yeah.
Oh no, it was. I had a handheld microphone.
Oh right,
in my face with the biggest pop filter. It had the biggest pop filter in the world on it.
Yeah,
I might have it here.
Just to add to the whole, I don't think you get rid of Amanek, man. Like, yeah. That would have been it.
That would have been the whole thing.
But Amanek is I don't know. He feels like a solid like soldier within the G2 system. Like I think I talked about this idea with like Big and Tabson and like do you remove Tizian and Keto? Like do you upgrade these players at all? Like all these guys seem like they soldier on. They do what you tell them to, and you need players like that when it's not going to be like, oh, but I think I could go for this play, and I've done this play many times in my old team, and I would have done it. Like there needs to be like this almost power dynamic where you have a few stars that you appease and a few other people that are just like willing to pick up the rest of the shit on the map effectively. And I think Amanek's one of those players. Like he can be a floating AWPer. I don't think you would ever want him as a main AWP, but as a secondary, fine, acceptable. Like he could do his like just area denial type AWPing, and that's fine. And I think he's just more dynamic than Jax in that respect. But I don't know. I do appreciate what Jax was able to do. Like the fact that because he hasn't had the most impact this tournament, I almost feel like he almost asked to be a part of like some of these lobby crunches that were actually just a big deal for G2 to even make the second map competitive.
He can be a floating AWPer in the sense that he can float off the fucking team onto another team, a tier 2 team perhaps, and then somebody else who can actually AWP, maybe like KennyS if he actually gets good again, or
can he actually
else, I'm not even sure myself, but just anybody else.
The thing about KennyS is he can hit every shot as long as he's like, so you know that uncharacteristic whiff from s1mple on Overpass where he sees like the top like pixel of his head.
s1mple's casting is basically he just sees this. He's like, uncharacteristic miss.
So yeah, I think no, I actually think KennyS could probably hit only those shots and no others is the problem. Towards the end of his career, that's basically it. So you know what? No shade to him. Hopefully he gets back, and in theory he did the right thing by just going to Valorant for a brief time, streaming, doing his thing, right? If he wants to come back now, he wants to grind up and find his love for the game again. The problem is, I think there was a bit of an interview with KennyS where he basically said, it might have even been a Dressup interview.
Who did that interview?
Yeah, it might have been.
It was on Dressup
Squid
where
CS.
he said, he did say that if nobody wants me in CS, I'll go elsewhere. That was the quote. We did sort of like I think Louis Mirror actually did sort of like a 10-minute sit down with him, and then we cut it into a video, which I think it performed pretty well. I thought it was actually really insightful, actually. And it's just sort of audio, and then there are clips in the background. It's a really good video. I suggest that people sort of check it out, and then subscribe to the channel, and then like it, and then share it to your friends.
I like how
Skriv's still
we've
fucking fighting
still
his microphone.
talking for
It
This is
cannot
the
be that-
longest. This is the longest. Is he the guy working audio for PGL?
Like, I don't understand how this is difficult. Like, it should just be.
No,
the whole point of that is that it's
Well,
on
you
and
guys,
on, so that it's easy
listen.
to
Hold
maneuver.
on, no, hold on. We'll wait for him to do this, right? But you guys all have the technology. So as soon as he's done, we'll do this.
Look, I'm just gonna do this. There you go.
And we'll talk like this for the rest of the broadcast. Yeah, because we gotta set it up
Hey,
like it
guys,
was his. Yeah. We gotta set it up like exactly like his was, right?
Yeah, like this.
So that he's completely like now it's like right in front of our faces. Hold on, here we go.
I will say, I do want to do a serious point. I think that PGL Major is like a big step forward, like in actually the hiring. I know that there was lots of sort of issues with not hiring many females, but they did hire the first ever deaf audio engineer. And I think that's a really big sort of step forward for the space. I want to see more of that in our CS tournaments.
Okay, I'm glad you made your serious point.
Yeah. Glad a Twitch copy
welcome
pasta
back.
has made its way in somehow.
Hello,
Welcome back,
yeah,
Skriv.
Come on,
okay,
Yumi.
so
Come on,
I heard
Yumi. Come on.
heard you
Is he
flaming
feeling
me.
okay?
Yes, I'm feeling fine. I heard you flaming me.
I wasn't flaming you. I was being
No,
nice.
the group flaming me on the microphone.
Yeah.
You know, like, and how it's because I had to take it from the back of my desk where it comes over to
Right.
the left-hand side of my desk. So I've moved like the whole like clamp mechanism and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And also I'm getting really tilted because my like trucks, my like wheels on my chair are fooked, and every time I sit down, like a couple of them pop out the side. Maybe
This fucking chair that you recommended everybody buy the other
Yeah,
day
okay,
for like
okay. I bought different-
$300 instead of a Herman
Listen,
Miller. You're
guy.
like, oh, I don't know if a Herman Miller chair is a
No,
big
no,
step
no,
up.
no,
Your
no,
chair just fucking
okay,
disintegrates when you
okay,
sit on it.
okay.
Like, what the fuck is this?
You got to let me get back in there because I got the wheels from Amazon. Like, you know.
What fucking
Why are you buying a
premium chair? Do you have to buy third-party wheels?
Well, to be fair, it's all the same argument because the wheels that came with it were actually shit. So,
By the way, if you're smart and if you work in the esports industry at all you do is you just send a couple of emails out to... That's the first thing that I did when I got the job at Dressup is I found this hideous fucking keyboard that cost like £500. It cost like £550. And I just emailed the guy saying, hey, I'm the lead entertainment producer at Dressup. Like, can I just have one of these? And they were like, yeah, you can have one. Like, well,
What do you mean?
Like,
Listen, Squid. Like I've got like 800 followers on Twitter. What kind of leverage do I have here? Like
you just say I'm
not
going
part
on...
of some big company. I'm just a guy that goes on stream sometimes.
I will be on the rekt Grand Final. I won't cast any of the rest of the tournament. What I'll do is I'll jump in for the Grand Final and you'll get at least sort of like 45, 50 viewers. Maybe one of them will actually buy the product.
There it is. There it is. I mean, you
I
can report the
remember.
actual statistics. Squid, we talked about viewership last stream, and you went on a whole huge rant about how the viewership it's not the right viewership. It's not English-speaking viewership.
Oh my God.
If you're going to want to talk about viewership figures, then
let's
repositioning will make sure that they have the viewership figures.
So I did say that before this tournament, I said if we don't hit 700,000 views, like English viewers, that will show how far CS has fallen. And even if we hit that, like it has fallen a certain amount, today did feel relatively high because it did feel like we were going to sort of top out at 400,000, 450, something like that. And the viewership was legitimately great today. And that is thanks to G2 putting up that like amazing second map. Obviously, the first map actually had really good viewership as well, maybe something bordering on the 500 or just above 500,000. And then I would say maybe sort of 750,000 at the end of that second map, and maybe pushing the boundary a little bit higher if we went to a third. So I will say that the viewership is recaptured. The big issue for me is what have we got coming next? Let me have a look at the matches on my so what have we got? So we've got the Pinnacle Fall Series 2. Nobody's going to be fucking watching that. We've got ESL Polish Championships, ESEA Europe. You've got DreamHack Open. Nobody watches those as well. Sorry, gentlemen. And then we'll go to the event. So what have we got? I think that the Blast Premier 4 final has to be like absolutely amazing again. And we need to get like online CS is dead. Like nobody fucking cares about this. We've got the V4 Future Festival as well, which I would say is a pretty cool sort of tier 2 tournament, like 1.5 tournament.
Blast should bang though. Blast should actually be a really solid event.
Blast is in an arena.
I think that Blast is going to be a really solid event, but the only exception there is you have only got 8 teams. It's not this sort of 16-team slobber knocker where we've got everybody involved, but you do have a lot of the best, right? You look at the roster. You've got Na'Vi, Nip, Vitality, Heroic, FaZe, Astralis, Liquid, Big. So I think Liquid probably an underwhelming team there. Big, an underwhelming team.
Big,
as well.
super underwhelming.
You have
listen, that's actually not
best.
even 100% true, Squid, because I mean, Big might make some roster changes, probably not big moves. Ha 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 ha. But you also have Liquid, who are actually going to be making some roster moves, like basically confirmed. There was the report earlier from @Cloud9 fan who dresses like a clown on Twitter, who said that. Basically, at least his company was the one who reported it. Where they said
Who
that
is this fucking company? Who is this guy? Because I see him all over the place, but don't know who he works for. I don't know who the fuck he is.
No, I'm talking about rushBmedia,
like
bro.
that. He works for rushBmedia.
I'm talking about Ryan at rushBmedia. That was what I was alluding to. Jeez, you fucked
There
my
is
whole
a guy
segment.
called Cloud9 fan.
Who is Cloud9 Win at C9 Win. He's actually listen. That guy's a cool guy. I don't mean to confuse people with assuming that that's who I was talking about.
So who is he?
He's just a guy. He programmed the HLTV demo downloader so that you don't have to manually download every fucking demo.
I still don't really know how to use that properly. I'll just say about that. I think I've used it like
he's made
once,
a YouTube video. Yeah, I've only used it a few times to be fair, but it is really useful. I've talked to people who like do these demo review stuff, and
the only thing I think if you wanted to do it the fastest way, you actually just have to download the whole series, which might be a bit awkward.
Yeah.
Basically,
instead of just one map, you mean?
Yeah, if you're doing one map,
I'm already
you need
struggling
to put in, like,
for
IDs
hard
and
drive
shit.
space over here, so I'm having to like
basically me interjecting that was me trying to sabotage any press Ryan from rushBmedia will ever get.
Well, that's kind of the
basically the report was Stewie and full and exploring options.
Thank you.
We finally got to the end of it.
We finally got to the end of my intended to be 1 second point. Go ahead.
Can I hijack again? Does the microphone look better or?
do whatever makes you feel comfortable, man. Like
that. The microphone. Can I be honest? Microphone looks worse.
Does it actually?
You should change it back. It's kind of embarrassing. I couldn't imagine anybody
you're just taking
like
the
that.
piss that I spend.
No. I'm serious. I'm serious. I think
for context, Skriv did just spend 15 minutes trying to rejig his microphone. While we waffled back and forth talking about stuff that I wanted Skriv's opinion on, and he's busy with headphones off.
What, like the Amanek move. I did hear. I've got like the semi-open box. I did hear a bit. Yeah, no, I apologize. It was a bad time for me.
And now basically, just horrible. Change it back.
It is a good job that you don't have any on-camera work planned because
fucking guy, honestly. Because I don't know if it is, if you're being honest or not. I get self-conscious about 100%. Shit like that.
It's serious.
There's no way.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. Keep it like it is, at least until the end of the show.
Now this mic comes with like one of the, you can buy an expensive like shock mount for it that I think would give me a few more options, so I'll probably end up doing that.
Makes sense. Oh yeah, and I did mean to say, so I see Maui Snake in chat. I didn't mention this, but there will be an extra thing at the end of this stream that you guys can all go to when we're done here. So once we feel like the show's coming to a close, maybe after another hour, maybe a bit less, who knows? You'll start to feel the energy wind down a little bit, but that doesn't mean anything. You take a break, maybe use the bathroom, come back, and then quicker than a PGL tech pause, we'll be back with some more content for you guys. So don't worry about it.
You can watch a worse show straight after.
Yeah, something like it's game time.
Yeah, it's game time. Here we go.
The server is online.
Yeah, there you go.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Something like that. Yeah.
Get owned, dude.
Yeah. Also, to all the people in the chat who are talking shade at our 4-hour streams beforehand, I will say only the first one was intended to be ridiculously long, and the second one was intended to be 2 hours, and we went double that because I guess AnThran just likes to talk, and he like eats chicken and stuff, and then Squid like falls asleep while looking at Twitter.
Imagine if I actually was in that one.
Yeah, it would probably have been even longer. Yeah.
So
you might have even adjusted your microphone.
Maybe.
So we were talking about Blast, and we were talking specifically about Liquid. Like going into this Blast tournament, they need to make some real, I think, notable moves in order for them to be a contender, because the rest of the teams that Squid rattled off there on the team list, feel pretty solid. Like Navi,
they'll lead them alive.
yeah. Like they
this
feel like
roster
they'll just
alive.
exit like what is it, 7th to 8th, right? So I can't imagine them getting too much. Maybe if it's like no, because it's probably all best of 3s. Blast doesn't do the best of 1s anymore. So yeah, that should be a legit tournament. That's going to be a really good one.
I feel like this Liquid roster could give sort of like Big and Astralis a run for their money, and maybe FaZe if they catch them on an off day. But sort of like these top 4 teams that we're seeing at Blast, I don't imagine that they would be able to put up anything close to a competition against them. It would be like very sort of quick and easy series, to be honest. Liquid have been like fairly underwhelming this tournament. What did they win? 1 map? In the group stage? Am I right in saying that? Didn't they just go out 1 in 3?
They won a bet. Ents out.
Yeah, it was a best of 3.
So they won
and then they
one
lost
match in the tournament then. So they went 1 in 3. They weren't massively sort of like they were.
I feel like the FaZe matchup was probably more competitive because I feel like they did take a map, but I can't really remember. All I remember from the Team Liquid series against FaZe was which flavor of chicken burrito that Sadakist ended up ordering.
I will say that is something that's very sort of stereotypical to FaZe. Is in majors they play to the level of their opponents, and that's why we've got such a fucking storied history of so many amazing FaZe matchups. And that was just another sort of like that was another slap at it, wasn't it? Where FaZe had these sort of very, very convincing matchups early in the tournament against teams that they should never sort of beat on paper with their history. And then you get into this Liquid matchup and it's one of the closest matches of the whole tournament. I think it was 2 maps, but they had Mirage, which went to double overtime, I think, and just like a really amazing matchup.
And
I just don't even know what roster moves we could even like theorize. I guess
for Liquid,
like, honest. Just teams in the tournament, because like we've already got Astralis, which already
they've confirmed their lineup. Yeah. Did you say Vitality was playing? I should just pull this up.
Yeah, so it's Vitality, NIP, Heroic, FaZe, Astralis, Liquid, Big, Navi.
You know, nobody is talking about NIP. They need at least one move, and it has to be Linus at this point, right? It has to be LNZ. Like I would even take. I would honestly, even though this feels underwhelming, I would even take just putting ZTR back in the lineup at this point. Like like they didn't look that great compared to what there should be based on the sort of like pedigree of the org and Device being there and Rez being there. But like I feel like they just played more like a unit with ZTR, and then LNZ hasn't had the same amount of production. So like I don't know whose dad he has in the organization, but surely he should be out by now.
It really depends if they want to stay Swedish. Obviously, they've shown they'll move out with Device, but if they, want to,
but he speaks
pull in some more
Swedish,
Danish. I think so. Yeah, if they want to pull in like more Danish players or something, but it might be a bit difficult if you're looking. But I just think like from a Swedish perspective, who else could they get? There's like Gamer Legion that maybe you could pluck a player out.
Would you hate a bit more experience on the NIP side, like an Olaf even?
I guess that is
the experience idea is cool, but I don't know about Olaf particularly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sold on him as a player. I'm just saying like someone of that sort of like stature.
Yeah.
I mean, you've literally got Dupree and Magisk up for grabs, talking about joining Vitality right now. Why don't they swoop in, put the money on the table, buy those 2 out? I don't think that's been signed. That's not a confirmed roster move, I don't think.
No, even on HLTV or whatever, they haven't. Yeah, it's just a report. Yeah.
Is someone recommending Force? I just don't think they separate, unfortunately.
So if no sort of signature has been put on the paper, then you get Zonix back as well. But like, what are the feelings like in that camp? Like you saw that sort of like now infamous photo from this major of them all staring Device down. Is that ever going to work again? Like, I don't think so. There's probably a lot of bad blood there due to the way that ended and how journalists almost stirred the pot as soon as that roster move was made, which was always going to happen. Like you've got to create storylines when these sorts of things actually take place. One other thing that this major did give us was the first ever matchup between those 2 teams ever, and it was the best of 1. It was the 16-1 on Inferno, but that
big
was
viewership,
still a 6 storyline. It was big viewership, I think, sort of like almost touching on 200k English views. Really, really interesting and like a hype matchup coming into it. PGL did a really good job at scheduling when they got deeper into the tournament, putting that most exciting matchup at the end of the day. That's what you've got to do and build the story of the day into that. Like if you're bored now, don't worry. You've got this hype matchup coming up last. That's one thing that, like on a producer side, they've done very well. So yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, I think Blast as well. Oh, go ahead, Yumi.
There's no way people are arguing for anybody that's played in the show match to make the return.
No, I'm sure that's...
yeah, I should have just immediately dismissed the Olaf point because he played in the show match. So
yeah, that is true. Yeah.
No,
that's a career ender.
Yeah. I think the core idea there is fine. You know, like the idea of getting someone with experience. Who the fuck do you get? Like all the experienced Danish guys are like, you know, not really...
They're all making their beds.
Keeping up. Yeah, I mean, you know, Olaf is kind of that, but I think he's in a position where he wants to just play with people that he likes, you know, which is why he'll keep coming out for FaZe, but probably not anyone else.
Well, you're talking experience. You did mention experienced Danish guys, which I assume was actually a sort of a verbal tick, but I actually think if you wanted to go a little bit more cross-continental or cross-country, you could grab some like you could grab like maybe Roy or something. It's like an outside shot, right? But if you wanted Nip to have one more Danish flag on the roster and get them to be just that much more like, I don't know, just get something. Like, I don't know if the entrying is really the biggest issue. I think the T-side calling is a huge issue for Nip. So maybe you target Hampus and LNZ, because I just don't think, like, no disrespect to LNZ. It's not like he's doing, like, the only thing he's doing wrong is just not putting up the numbers. And I just don't think he's going to be able to play at the tier 1 level. Like, he's not the player you call up. So if you're going to if you're not going to call up a player of that, like, if you're not going to call somebody up from the academy team, if you're not going to look for somebody endemic to the space, then I think maybe...
One sec, guys, carry on.
Yeah. I think maybe you go straight in. I think maybe
honestly, I swear to God, man.
Yeah, I think maybe you go straight into to like a Roy maybe or somebody else, and obviously I don't know who you get for IGL, Swedish or Danish. That almost makes me feel like Nip has to start looking abroad, international.
So. I guess, I mean, the thing is, we could honestly talk and theorize roster moves all the time, but I mean, we just end up running around in circles, I feel like, so.
I'll say about the Blast Premier Fall Final, which is the next really premier tournament, no pun intended, that's coming up. I think, considering the teams that are attending, again, Na'Vi, Nip, Vitality, Heroic, those are your sort of top 4. I do think that it's incredibly top heavy. You have... NIP might be the only one that's sort of like a pretender to the throne, but like that top 4, if you're going to use that as your barometer, like FaZe, Astralis, Liquid, Big look way less likely. And maybe because of the roster shuffles, Astralis could supersede Nip and replace them. Maybe Vitality ends up getting completely owned at some point because of their roster moves, assuming this is the deployment for it. There's a lot of like exciting narratives and storylines that we could draw from for that, which is nice because in the back of my head, I was thinking if we blow our load on the major and then we're like sort of not excited for Counter-Strike anymore, I think it's actually the start of more excitement because we are going back to the arenas, we are going back to LANs, and that's probably the biggest thing.
I guess we could even just highlight, like, out of those 8 teams, Na'Vi, Heroic, FaZe, I guess, are the only ones you'd expect to not make a roster move. Like, Astralis have already done theirs. Liquid are expected to make one. Vitality, there's rumors of it. Like, are Big gonna make a move? I feel like that's probably going to happen. Like, FaZe might actually just have a roster move in that maybe Olaf goes back onto the bench or removes himself or whatever.
I saw people calling for Brokey to get cut, and I don't fully understand that based on their performance at this major. Maybe the argument from those individuals, I don't know if anybody here bites on that argument, but if you guys think that, like, how do you guys rate Brokey as an opera?
I think Brokey's fine.
I think he did pretty good this tournament.
I would say he's probably like
he was their best player for a long time,
but I would say he's
in their top 5 players for sure. Yeah.
I'd probably say like on when he's on it, he could probably be their best player. I don't think that we've seen like vintage twists very much.
Yeah.
for this FaZe team.
Is it
So,
even inarguable to say that this tournament he was their very best
Yeah, I
player?
think
Like
so.
he was absolutely clutch. Like remember that ancient matchup? I can't remember who it was actually against, where he seems to be hitting everything. He's stuck in the corner. He fights his way out in totally like disadvantageous
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
He absolutely sort of bosses sort of 3 or 4
Yeah.
players. He always gets, and this is how you know that a player is playing supremely well, is they always get one more kill than they should. And Brocky properly put himself in that status in the tournament. It's actually really sad. They're the one team that I would have liked to see in the playoffs instead of an NIP, instead of
Or a
like,
Furia.
yeah, instead of a Furia. Definitely Furia would definitely be the sort of obvious one that you'd sort of like minus Furia plus FaZe. They would have been really exciting in the arena. And they're another sort of hype team that brings the fans, brings sort of the energy up. Like nobody could argue that the crowd wouldn't be behind them. Obviously, you've got Swedish audience, Olaf. He's unbelievably popular. I'm actually surprised that they brought out Get Right instead of him to do the sort of like the trophy at the start.
I think it's because Get
since he
Right's
is
no
the
longer
Get Right's
actively
no longer
playing.
inactive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that is the other thing as well, right? But like, I think that Olaf is sort of like coming to the. It will be Olaf in a year's time, 2 years.
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I think as well, Get Right's a little bit more of a personality, you could say.
Especially since he started streaming for the past 2 years.
Yeah,
right?
Olaf's not really done as much.
Like he is the original sort of
In that
goat in
sense.
CSGO, isn't he? Like he was that
Yeah, he is.
status at the very start,
Yeah.
and then sort of like Olaf perhaps took the crown.
Olaf's era is a little harder though, for sure.
It would have been like it would have played right into the PGL Majors sort of narrative as well. Like we get a lot of older talent, a lot of legacy people from 2 years ago. I mean, FaZe are basically the encapturement of like a lot of these older stars in that respect. Like people used to always go on about how consistent Rain was and how good Olaf Meister was, and Carrigan is this very cerebral mind. And then we had these up and coming stars like Brokey. I guess it's probably like the least amount of like sort of endemic fan base attached to him, but has been like basically leading FaZe from the bottom end up in a weird way for a long time. So
You know, the one sort of storied player, the sort of veteran or retired player who we didn't get to see at this tournament, who I think was almost definitely in Stockholm because he was a stand-in for Liquid, is Pasha. We didn't see any. He didn't come
Him
on
and
the
KennyS,
stage.
remember?
He
Both
didn't
of them
do
were
anything.
subs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And KennyS, that's a lot more reasonable, right? And he's more recent. But Pasha, have him out on the stage, deliver the trophy, do some sort of speech. All you have to do is send Pasha out to say, "You're not my friend. You're my brother, my friend."
Yeah.
And that's like
He
what
should
you
have
have
been.
at
He should have
Major,
been in
and
the
then
show
everybody goes
match.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like he should have been in the show match instead of
loved it.
Zeus
Oh, you know what?
promoting like
Let's
10
talk. Let's talk about
brands.
show
I know,
matches. Let's talk. You want to talk about chicken? Nobody's gonna get that reference. Talk about show matches because I think at this point,
I like that. I got that.
okay, this is like one of the best examples of like the most half-hearted show match that I've seen.
it was dumb.
Yeah,
This
and
must be the worst show match of all time, right? From concept to like materialization on the screen. It was just like properly shit.
The players had fun at the very least.
the players did look like they had fun, but like from the get-go, there's no custom map. By the way, custom map insertion 2 in the game, added by Valve, set in Sweden with a bunch of Swedish like language stuff all over the place. Like this is the most easy layup possible.
But it would have been confusing to follow because if you haven't played Insertion before, you'd have been like, why are these people just randomly spawning in all of these different spots? Like, it's a little bit harder to understand just from like a Counter-Strike's very easy to read. Like, if you looked at Insertion as your entry into Counter-Strike, you'd be like, what the fuck's happening?
Well, you fixed
Yeah,
that
like
just
the
by
only
like literally a
tournament
map
like that.
trailer or something where you show off the map,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's
they
like
could do.
we're
Yeah, for
the
sure.
show match is set in Insertion 2, the sequel to the hit custom map. This is currently available in matchmaking. Blah blah. And then you go like CTs will pick their spawn. You explain that in like less than a minute, and then you're good. I think. I mean, it is a hostage map. It's probably not what people are used to be seeing. But why? Why don't you have something that is not what we're literally not used to seeing as viewers?
Why
Well,
is it
just
Mirage?
compare
Why
it,
is it a
yeah.
full team playing as well? Like, that's just not a part of like the the feel of a show match should almost be like, these are the personalities. These are people that you don't get to see play Counter-Strike very often or even at all.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that is Copenhagen Flames, to be fair.
Yeah, we've never seen them play before, not even at this tournament. Jesus.
Well, just compare it to the PGL Krakow show match. Let's say where you've got Henry like fucking yeeting PCs across the stage, and you've got like talent in the booths. Like, didn't that actually happen?
Did he throw a PC?
Yeah.
Wasn't that that?
I must have
He
just
literally
not
just
missed it.
threw a PC.
That is pretty
that
good.
was like a stage.
And you've got
a
this,
stage.
and you've
Or
got
like
this
Mike them up or
scripted
whatever.
aspect, and it's all entertainment. Like,
Didn't they do player swaps at one of these show matches as well? They literally had people.
Yeah,
come
I
in
think
and
that
sit
was
in.
IEM Sydney.
We should have used the short matches, and then you could have had your start with Mirage, and then you could have had your insertion tour, your
best of 3 in short matches would have been perfect for this. You know,
would have
been quicker than the Mirage match, by the way.
I don't like show matches on the same day as the grand final. I think I made that known to you guys. I think it's pretty fucking dumb, to be honest. It takes some of that gravitas away. I would honestly have preferred some kind of round table with some of these legends. You know, you get your Olaf in and he's still active, but you know, you get Zeus and you get Right and Pasha and stuff to just talk about their major experiences and like how it's changed and how they remember this, that, and the other, you know, things like that. I think would build the hype of the day and the hype of the final, and then you have a few of them in different finals, and you can even look like to the different eras. You can look to sort of the role swaps, because Zeus has obviously been in quite a few, and I think in 1.6 he was a little bit more effective as a player. You know, so you talk about that, and then how he's had to transition into more of an in-game leading role and all the different blah 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 blah. I think that something like that would have built up, rather than, you know, a half-assed show match because it's just what we do when there's a major on or whatever.
It honestly felt like they got Zeus just because he was there. Like, I don't know how this passes by producers, talent, whoever, but how is Zeus allowed to run out with like a well, I can't remember what it's like, a crypto exchange website
on his conflicting sponsor, a competing sponsorship.
Like, why is this guy just wearing the full brand of a competing sponsor for your tournament out, and he's allowed to just like keep on the glove and all that? Like, that's just fucking mental to me.
In
like,
a tournament that failed to get big sponsorships anyway, like as I said yesterday, no mainstream sponsors practically, like none of these sort of like pushing the boundaries sponsors. I hope that over the next 6 months, after the perceived success of the viewership at this major, we would hope to like sort of reel some of those big car sponsors and shoe sponsors and these mainstream companies back into the game, because that's what we need to actually grow it.
You did have a very impassioned rant yesterday where you said you could get Mercedes and BMW and Pringles. It's just a funny association that those are the top 3 you could think of, 2 of which were cars. So.
These are sort of like the big mainstream sponsors that we've been able to pull into CS over the last couple of years. And that is what you need to grow the space, right?
Pretty good argument to be made there that like we do need something different. I think we could briefly touch on the idea that maybe Valve should be a bit more ponying up a bit more cash specifically for the TO, or I think Squid, your idea was that the TO themselves get a portion of the proceeds from like tournament stickers, basically, right?
Yeah, sticker money, perhaps.
But
like it felt like PGL were penny pinching all major. Every single one of these sort of like backtracks that they did. Okay, we're not actually going to have the talent on site. This seemed to be a penny pinching measure. The fact that you don't have as much sort of like of all of this content, and we did have a lot of sort of like technical issues that is fixed by you hire an extra person for that role.
Observing was one of those, by the way. Not exactly a technical issue.
Observing was pretty dreadful.
You hire another observer to maybe help Randall or help one of these other observers. Do something, make it so that there's two-man teams, so that one of them is doing replays on the second stream instead of it just being all one guy, right?
That is an opinion, by the way, that I've not heard anybody push back on. That the observing this tournament, it was actually better in the grand final, I will say. I don't know if that's because they did put more observers on.
Maybe all 3 of them were on the one game.
Yeah, perhaps. Like they come together, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers style, and then they finally catch a kill between the 3 of them.
Yeah, the Voltron reference from Richard Lewis at the desk was actually about the observing, clearly. Can I just say, we have some people in the chat talking about the casting and the talent drama that happened.
Can I
Go
Can I
ahead.
just tune in on the so people even expecting like James and DDK could they have done the show match?
Yeah.
Even if that was the case, like they probably wouldn't have enjoyed that. Like that, I imagine the
Sure,
same
yeah.
amount of pushback would have been encountered because I've done a show match at one of FaZe's events before, and I can tell you people don't really give a shit about what happens in the show match because it, for all intents and purposes, it's there for entertainment and actually
Yes.
holds no inherent value for anything other than entertainment. So they, even if that were the case, I don't think they would have been happy with just that game added to the tally because they expect to be getting like more major playoff games than they did.
They expect to be getting
I
legit
think-
games, yeah, specifically.
By the
For sure.
way, I would say, as a smaller commentator, a show match is the one time that you can sort of like brand yourself and you've
For
got this
sure.
personality and you can get yourself out there. You can be funny actually on the stream, which you can't do if you're given a quarterfinal or a semi-final. However, this is not the position James or DDK are in. They don't need to brand themselves or prove
course.
that they're funny. James actually had a very, like, he had an amazing cast in the one quarterfinal that he was given, like him especially, and DDK massively stepped up there. So they probably felt like at that point they were robbed. But as we know, before they gave that cast, the decision was already made. So PGL would have had to backtrack that decision if they were going to put them on a semi-final based on their quarterfinal performance. And unfortunately, their group stage matches were not good. Like DDK didn't really show up. It didn't seem like he really wanted to be there. I don't know what was going on, but it seemed like a very poor performance in the group stage, in the legend stage, in the champion stage. It was only when we got into that final legends match and once they got into the arena where they
Especially
really
the
stepped
arena, yeah.
up, and it was like the DDK and James of old.
Yes.
Really exciting stuff. I would have liked, after seeing that quarterfinal, to see them do a semi, to see them maybe not knock down all their fucking water bottles on the desk, but cast a big game in the arena once more. And instead of having s1mple cast every single match, did a decent job. Maybe that's an uncharacteristic miss from PGL.
Yeah, I would honestly say, like, James especially is, someone who gets the LAN buff, DDK
Yeah, sure.
maybe can survive in a studio environment, and he's been doing a little bit more with the Valorant and all that kind of stuff. But James is definitely someone I think that needs a crowd to do his best work.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't think James was
So-
bad at all in the studio environment. Like, I think it was DDK sort of like almost
for
sucking the
sure,
energy
for
out
sure.
of that environment. And I
But all
don't know
the
what was
same-
going on there again. But you're only, as a duo, you're only as bad as your sort of
You're
worst
only
component.
as good as your weakest link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
I
have
don't know.
many
It's
strong
kind of a
words
weird
about
one.
DDK's performance in the studio stage, but I will
No.
say that like everybody's studio performance could have been better, and I don't think DDK is an exception to that for sure. And I also think that there's almost like an added level of analysis or like it's like this sort of specter of DDK's been casting a lot of Valorant. And then so like you're almost like hyper aware maybe or conditioned to think a little bit more like, is he like really all there? Is he really doing all that stuff? And then obviously the other thing that has to be asked is like, is he, the same thing that basically s1mple had to deal with when he came back from Overwatch, right? Is like, what is his vernacular up to stuff? Is he, has he got the right jargon? Is he going to be like zoned into the right things? And I think that's actually a fair like initial point to be at. But I also think that, specifically s1mple got a ton of hate at this event. Not even like he was casting something else either. Obviously he'd been casting CSGO the whole calendar with obviously Anders. So like that was a case where you don't really, I think it is a really messy behind the scenes thing. We'll find out a lot about it when it comes time for the next By the Numbers, which, as Skriv did tweet, it is going to be straight fire. And it's just
Skrivcast, so.
Yeah. So at Skrivcast, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely rough. I don't think that the performance in the studio would have impacted the decision for playoff games, because from all accounts, we can only see that like there was an agreement, and then that agreement was not necessarily respected when it came time for the sort of playoffs to actually be determined, right? And that was the whole grievance that Bardolph had aired, is that like basically the old boys club had taken over the whole scheduling and made it so that they only get one quarterfinal matchup.
Yeah.
And that's if that is true, and I don't see why he would tweet it if it wasn't, really. It doesn't make any sense. Right now, that seems to be the prevailing sentiment. I can see why you'd get outraged. I could see why you would have some grievances and some misgivings and feel like you got fucked over. And I think that totally makes sense. I do think that it, like, on the same token, right? If Squid just said, like, James and DDK don't need to brand themselves. They don't need to cast a show match, or they don't need to like do all this stuff just so that they can have a looser environment, Harry and Hugo style, to show the world what they can do. That's what Harry and Hugo did CS Summit, and now ESL are letting them do their thing, right? So we kind of get an opportunity to discover like who these people are, like how they cast and, you know, what their style is. We don't need that for James and DDK because they've already done legendary matches. I think the same sort of thing is probably in the back of James's mind, where he says, I'm going to call these people out. I'm going to tweet about it. I'm going to make a stink about it. And, you know, fuck what happens on the other end. I'm money. Like, people know how good I am, and people, there's a fan base for me. And so I think maybe that had something to do with the way that he approached it. At the end of the day, it does look like it really hindered a lot of the talent on the desk, and maybe less so on the casting. I think the casting was fairly solid all event as soon as we got to the arenas, especially. But I do think that you know, when that did happen, we had maybe a bit more somber attitudes on the desk, which I think was like a pervasive element throughout the whole thing.
The way that this sort of like talent hiring situation actually does make sense is if you watched all of the group stage matches and then you decided that James and DDK were going to get the 1 quarterfinal, Sadakist and Moses were going to get one of the semifinals, Anders and Semler were going to get the other semifinal, and then
Sadakist.
Machine and Spunj were going to get the grand final. And that is where it makes sense, where you've got those 3 duos, the best 3 performing duos, and then you're handing off the sort of guard. As I said yesterday, this is the major where a lot of this sort of like veteran talent has said, and Richard has just said it, this is my last major. Thorin tweeted it out today. This might be my last major. And a lot of the sort of veteran talent, especially those 2, let's be honest, will be feeling like that. And DDK, last major, more than likely as well. So this is them metaphorically passing over the torch to Spunj and Machine, who's worked lights out all week.
And also, just in general, they're like the most storied caster, the ones who have done the most work thus far in terms of by volume. Maybe on par with Harry and Hugo, but probably more just because they would have gotten more like the grand finals so far, right? So
yeah, that's one of the few scenarios where I do see it making sense. But I don't know what James was told, obviously, behind the scenes by any of the talent, or actually the talent manager or PGL directly. I don't know what he was told, so he feels like he's been misled in some way. Scoot's at a point. You put it in the contract. If you feel like you're entitled to a semi-final, when you sign the contract, that's in. That's in there. It's a clause.
And there's no opportunity for other casters or whoever, other members of talent, to start renegotiating what's going on behind the scenes. And, you know, it does sound the way that he's described it, that it was very much like a backstabbing kind of move, where it was like, or backbiting at the very least, where it's like, we'll send another member of talent to tell you what we have decided. It's like, what the fuck is this kind of emissary shit from like the medieval centuries? You know, you can't have that.
You can't shoot the messenger.
Yeah, I guess so. But like, I'm sure if I'm in Bardolph's shoes, I wanna, you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. So it looked like you had a point there, Yumi. Why don't you take this one?
Well, I think it was just to contextualize it. Like, we're going to get the second side of the story. Sure, that's fine. Yeah. Like, we can all empathize with Bardolph's position if that is as far as it goes. But Richard's been tweeting about how, like, there are other people that even deserve to maybe even, or had reason enough to travel home from the event. And that's him now tweeting after the event is concluded, where, you know, we're not breaking that sacred oath and like effectively breaking the immersion for the viewer of like, oh, you know, things are going well, and now things are maybe there's a few skeletons in the closet, so to speak. And I mean, who would you have even guessed to be people in that scenario, right? Because all the talent did well. But yeah, it's crazy to think that so many of this talent might not even come back, especially if we end up having a long hiatus like we did for this major. I hope that's not the case, but honestly, we don't know with like global situations and where or when we're going to host these events. And yeah, that we could just see that Spunj and Machine become that now mainstay staple. Then we see like a slow shift where, yeah, now that opportunity does open up for the people that feel like they should have gotten it from holding down the online era in the first place.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I would also say, go ahead, Skriv.
I was just going to say it's mega interesting. Like, I've kind of been reading the chat a little bit, and you know, I don't know. There's a little bit of, you know, like Semler criticism. We talked about it today. Like, his vernacular is very, very repetitive. Also, something I think a lot of commentators fall flat to, but it doesn't seem like he's noticed. And I think that it is something that he should kind of pick up on we obviously have the meme with like Machine and Spunj where they say chance all the time, but I think that's kind of something that's a little bit harder once you have like a word in your head, it fits pretty hard. But then, you know,
Very
there's some
few
people
words
saying
that like you basically need to restructure your entire sentence to find a synonym for that, right? So
right.
Also give them the benefit of the doubt that this was their first ever major grand final after like Machine's case, what, like 12 years or something crazy, like grinding it out in CS. He's had the chance at semifinals in the past, but he's never had this opportunity. So you are going to be feeling the pressure in that scenario. And
just go
that's
back to
when
default,
those
right?
mistakes, you go back to default
absolutely.
and you have to rely on sort of like your base at that point.
Yeah.
And if your base is extremely high, then like exceptional, you're going to have a great cast. But that comes with experience, and they've been out of the arena for a long time. Remember, that was the second best of 3 that they got to cast in the arena, like in the last 2 years. So that is a really big thing. So usually I would be the one like shitting on the cast as the hardest, but you have to give them the benefit of the doubt there, right?
Yeah, I'd also say that when you're kind of both doing it, like as a duo, you have a bit of a crutch phrase or a crutch word, or it's going to be like way harder to get that out. And like you say, Darian, it's very, very difficult. I think, you know, it's something that probably one of my main struggles has been like crutches and trying to be more creative with how I make the same point but say it in a different way. You know, I think it can be very hard to work that out mid-sentence, and it's also something that you probably just want to forget about when you're going to go back to your base or whatever, but at the same time you don't want to be critiquing yourself every single round while you're casting the major final and that kind of thing. But it's definitely something
you don't have the headspace to.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah,
but
you're
it's
battling
just
nerves, you're making sure the narrative's all correct. Like how are you even thinking about words?
Yeah, there was one moment that kind of stood out, right? There was one moment in the final that was like, it was the most like it was the shocking Niko whiff, I think. But maybe it was some other moment where it was just completely ridiculous. And we all like collectively, we were going crazy in our group call, but the casters were like dead silent for like maybe 10 seconds or something like that. And YouM3 had called it out. Like, it's so hyped that they're letting the arena sort of do the casting in that one moment, right? So that was
it was his like potential 1v5, right? Where he killed
that's what it was. After he got 3 of them.
B.
Yeah.
And we were all like, are they going to read this? Are they going to do this, that, and the other? And those are all things that I think Machine and Spunj could have also pointed out and definitely clocked, but just letting the crowd.
They're calculating themselves in the audience, right? Like, how the fuck does he win this?
Yes, yeah. They're letting the crowd's energy sort of like dictate what's going on, like
which I think is a skill in and of itself.
You have that's a safety net that you have when you cast in an arena. When you do that online, okay, that's the whole moment dead. You failed it at that point, but you have this sort of crutch of the audience that you can rely on. When your brain goes blank in the biggest moment, it would usually be absolutely like insane. I'm sure that Machine would have loved to have strung like 2 or 3 smart phrases amongst that sort of clutch attempt, and it just didn't happen. I think that then the arena like 100% saves you.
Yeah, and it's something famously that Anders has been really, really good with, is where, you know, I think one of the struggles that he had with coming online is actually finding a little bit more wordplay to string things together and to increase the hype or the excitement of the moments that's just happened, because obviously he's known for having his little phrases or whatever, but then there is also that he would just very excitedly be like, oh my god, you know, he finds the 1v2, and instead of adding to that with like a bit of a deeper description or whatever it would be, like he's just quiet and the crowd does the rest. Like famously, Anders is so good at letting the crowd do a lot of the talking,
let the round breathe, I think is the way that people have described it. But yeah, it's crazy that the online era almost deleted that style of casting. I think a lot of arena commentators even noted at the time, like, it's a different ball game effectively. Like, you have to try and maintain attention for longer periods of time. There's no ambient noise, no nothing. So I don't think the crowd carries, or I guess you're saying it's like a safety net. I that is true, but it takes a lot of it's like, it's brave in a sense as well, because it is their first grand final, especially as a duo, that they're willing to take that space, where in the online era, like, it doesn't feel quite as natural. Like, Machine himself has also been like somebody that has been a proponent of doing these sort of like whispering, like, trying to build the moment up in that sort of sense, which is something Sadakist used to do a lot as well. And in the online era, it just didn't feel quite as like genuine. It felt a little bit more strange. Like, even if you have that same even if that is how you feel, it doesn't
Yes.
come across the same way on the broadcast because there's less inherent tension from online play.
Yeah, there's definitely still some work to be done, I think, for that duo. If we're Machine, like you say, with the whisper plays on a sort of technical level, still needs to work out how loud he needs to be, because there were a couple moments where you just couldn't hear what he was saying because the crowd's like louder than he is.
And
I
that's
don't think
probably
that
first time back
yeah.
in the arena kind of moments.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
For sure,
And then also you kind of have to bear in mind, I think, for Spunj, I'm pretty sure it would be like his first cast in front of a crowd.
That might be true, actually.
He's done desk work, I think, but it's not.
Yeah, for sure. But like
I think
casting
these
wise,
two duos, this the quarterfinal matchup that they had would have been their debut, right? So.
Yeah. But in terms of like the speed and that kind of thing, I think that he stumbled over himself a little bit and tried to get too much out in a short amount of time. That kind of thing. And I don't know, they definitely toned down, I will say, in the final, they definitely toned down the whole back and forth thing that they have. They do that a lot in studio where, casters do it across the board where obviously I'm not going to talk for a minute, talk for a minute, talk for a minute. You will have a few moments where it's a little bit shorter. But they kind of do it a lot in studio. And I think it's something that we talked about a little bit as being kind of jarring and a little forced from time to time, or they'd make it kind of jovial or whatever, and it'd take away from a serious moment. But I think they really did tone that down here and sharpened up, as it were, for the arena cast.
I think especially Nuke's cast was very memorable in that sense, and that's gonna stick with me for a while in general. And obviously there was the armchair casters lull message in the chat, which is always a good one since we are all at one time were casters. So it's good comment.
Jokes on you. I don't have any armrests.
Yeah, exactly. I'm standing, so can't be me. Couldn't be me. But I do want to make a point because I saw people saying like basically making definitive statements with perhaps some authority, although the authority that comes with a fan or enthusiast is not necessarily much, that X casting duo is the best, just like saying that. And they're not saying objectively the best. You can infer that they mean this is my preferred duo. But when people throw around terms like that, and this is a lost cause if you've ever read any messages or any Reddit threads or any Twitter posts, this is a total lost cause that I'm about to engage in right now. But I do want to add a counter argument. Okay, I want to have a counter argument that allows us to see, maybe there's a little bit more to this story than a lot of the fans, a lot of the enthusiasts, a lot of the people that comment on these Reddit threads, for example, they completely miss. And it really does depend on what you're testing for. If we had casters that you could just compare and they were so similar, but one was obviously better in some one area that it was like obvious who was the better caster, then it would be a pretty boring set of casters. I mean, if they only work at the other tournaments, maybe there's some value there because you'll always get like the same quality cast from each tournament, even though there's two separate duos. But the fact that Harry and Hugo have the comedic style, the fact that Launders and Scrawny approach hype differently than other ones, the fact that s1mple likes to get analytical and perhaps critical in a way that you're not going to hear from some of the other casters, the fact that Machine and Spunj have their style, and obviously James Bardolph and DDK have their style, where they're a little bit more hybrid with both of them picking up some play-by-play moments back and forth. Like, you don't get the opportunity to even look at and pick a favorite to begin with as more of like one of these pleb fans that I'm sort of addressing. It's like, you don't get the opportunity to do that if they're all the same, if they're all within touching distance of each other, and it is actually objectively clear who the best caster is. It really depends on what you personally as a fan enjoy. And I don't, as much as we've sort of chided the esports industry as well for a general approach to hiring talent, I don't think at the very top level you can skate by with below average, below par performances. I think they get to this level for a reason, in that meritocratic sort of sense, where they've proven that they can really bring the hype and really bring their A game when it matters most in some of these most hype matches. And I think Nuke especially, and just in general, this best of 3 grand final was a series that sort of argues that point. So
it's a good point as well. And it's the one thing that solidifies you as a tier 1 caster is having a character. You look at the tier 2 tournament circuit and the casters who actually commentate them, and we don't have characters, we don't have personalities. Either they're not making content or they're not getting that character across on the broadcast. When you look at these tier 1 matchups and in tier 1 duos, you've definitely got characteristics that are totally unique to that duo, as you've just described. And that's what's missing when you sort of like go down the rigging. I feel like that's the one thing that you need to sort of prioritize if you are like aspiring to be a tier 1 commentator, is what is my character? What am I bringing to the broadcast? This is an entertainment product. How do I differentiate myself from the fucking 500,000 other people out there trying to do this? And here is one of them.
There it is.
Yeah, if there was like a clear cut method to being the top caster or the best caster in tier 1 or whatever, like people would have had like written guides upon it, and people would be buying books and whatever.
But enough about Red Eye.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, you can just engage in a conversation with somebody and not enjoy their voice. That is also a criteria for whether or not they're the best caster for you or not. Like their substance, their technique, all of that might be good, but maybe their voice just rubs you the wrong way. And that, like, ultimately, that's just how it is sometimes. Like Squid's already torn off the headset, doesn't like when I speak, so that's fine. Like it just ends up in a situation where there's always going to be favorites for certain people, but there's no... You can never just say like one caster is the best over all the rest. Like that is fully preference.
Yeah, it's so interesting as well. You know, like how the, let's say, layman that would only watch the major or only watches, you know, the big ESL events like Cologne and Katowice and stuff like that, and maybe doesn't have the fullest picture of who the top 20th or 30th caster may be, that kind of thing. And yeah, how it is that they just kind of pick up on things like you say, like voice. That's sort of an example that I use, right? Where when we're watching, and especially myself, like I can be sort of hyper critical of even like the top level commentators and stuff like that. But then you kind of realize that it's like they're still putting on a great show. I'd probably still make those mistakes if I were in that position, or could have said something a little bit better given hindsight, blah blah blah. So yeah, I think definitely it's big subjective. You just
I just want to say this is a big opportunity for me, Skriv, Darian, like casting the Malta vibes. I've not had an opportunity like this in my career. I've been sat down, obviously, with you, me, and Skriv. He's leaving. I think we should all put suits on. This fucking grand final day. What are you fucking playing at here? Darian, where's your suit?
Somewhere buried in a closet. There we go. AnThran.
I was getting. I've been talking recently. I've been sort of like expanding my horizon and talking to sort of esteemed casters like M&J Casts, who told me every time you do like a big online tournament, you have to wear a suit, and that's kind of the rule.
What do you think, YouM3? Do you have a comeback here?
No, put your fucking suit on.
There we go. Here comes Skriv with what looks to be a
Like,
trench coat.
He's coming with a
What
trench.
the fuck is that? What farm did you buy that
this
from?
Is my character.
If I encountered you in a dark alleyway, I would be terrified.
I would run as fast as I can, which isn't very fast, but faster than you, I bet.
Whoa. I have pretty good acceleration. I got pretty good acceleration.
Acceleration.
So, it's just the stamina is an issue.
And I'm already in character.
What is that?
Bad take. Horrible take. Just
watch. I can do two things. It's not just like this.
I can do two things, he says.
Jesus Christ.
My God.
Are you about to take off?
Can we get this guy hired?
Like the pilot's cap.
Yeah. Are you about to go flying?
I don't know, mate. I bought it from a charity shop for like £1. When I do like a personal stream, just to like 4 or 5 people, like my mates or whatever, it's just like you have stay hydrated. I have change hat. I actually have lots of hats. It is my character. Here we go.
Yeah, he's pulled out many of these hats before.
Here we go. This is obviously the end of the show, just based on the fact that we're all wearing ridiculous things. AnThran, did you want to say something to the viewers since you joined at the last second here? Do you have any point you want to make and discuss for the last maybe 5-10 minutes? Anything about the major? What was your thoughts about the major, bro? The major's over.
You joined a fucking talk show with nothing to talk about.
Come
on, man! You gotta have a take or something. How'd you feel?
What do you want, man? I slept through most of it.
Oh my God! Oh God!
Jesus!
Jeez.
I think that's an actual kick.
Anyway,
this is the one day that I slept through.
And you slept through s1mple losing to G2 in 3 maps and their nuke streak getting on. Yeah.
No way. I thought they lost 19, 17, 16, 10.
Bro, I wasn't. I thought about
actually
making
22
this
something
it's
else.
22, 19. 22, 19.
I thought about tweeting this for the whole event. By the way,
it was 16, 11.
If you're an upcoming caster and you're not paying attention to the fucking major, come on, man.
I was up until today. Here's what happened. Let me tell you exactly what happened. I woke up at noon. I saw a message from Squid saying, "Come on, we're getting here. We're starting." Because we all have watch.
And then you just rolled over and went back to fucking sleep.
No.
What's wrong with you?
I looked at my phone and I turned on the major. I'm like, okay, who's on team get right? What's the map? Because that's what I was interested in. I did not give a flying fuck about 3 players who I see all the time on Get.
All right, then. All right.
And on Mirage,
I've heard enough. I've heard enough. Let's have a vote in the chat. Kick or not kick? I'm starting the vote kick right now. This is the vote kick.
Here comes the vote kick to close up the stream.
Exclamation mark, vote kick.
Oh, no.
Is this the last time we see AnThran on the podcast?
3, you're fucking 5-0 right now. 6, 7-0.
Honestly,
you're already gone. 10, 11. Fucking unbelievable.
That was
He's
a lot.
kicked.
All right, he's out. I don't even know. Wait, did you actually remove him?
No, I didn't. He just.
I think he just left. I think he understood that the vote went
I
through.
understood. That's how it works.
All right, that was a good. Good close.
I mean, that should just be a cardinal sin. Like, this is the first major in 2 years. You sleep through it. Come on, man.
I feel like I've achieved something. I think that I'm the first person to ever kicked a fucking guest off of a talk show.
To be fair, this is supposed to be like an open sort of like, oh, you can come in and out, like whoever's in the group chat,
it is supposed to just be people walk up, they just join, they'd leave. Skriv's
There's not a lot that he could have said right there that would have
to defend himself,
guaranteed his like departure.
No, all he had to say was, it was a pretty good event, I think.
Look at the bad shit that I've said. I fucked around with my mic for 10 minutes. I went and put a suit on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a memorable post-major show. All these shows are pretty good. I think the 4-hour ones are pretty funny. Poop Man, obviously, shout out Poop Man. The OGs know. What do you guys say? I mean, we've already sort of talked about the premise of this, but I think we could probably do this again for non-major events. We just throw it on.
Blast.
Yeah, we just throw it on after Blast. Yeah. I don't think too many people will be throwing it on after the Flow Fire League, but whatever.
No. I could light a candle after that or something.
There you go. Yeah, big up Poop Man.
That's the 24th to the 28th.
Like
so.
next month or later this month.
He's back.
Literally fuck off, bro. You didn't watch the major. You've actually been kicked. I'm serious.
Don't worry,
oh, here we go. He's going to defend himself. What do you got to say? I was talking over you.
Highlight video. It was a great event. There were some fun times,
So it is.
Opening and flames were, cool.
Don't worry, guys. I watched the highlight video. I've got the whole story of the major right here.
He's getting his money's worth. Yo, what's up, dude? Big chillin', by the way.
Big chillin'.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Also, I don't know if anyone...
org that dropped their CS team, you mean?
Something like that, I don't know.
Did they have a CS team?
I put the
They
default
did.
overshirt on.
They were mediocre,
which seems to be the new
did.
default caster move, is putting an overshirt on.
Should I put a fedora on?
Go for it, mate.
No.
Have you ever ordered like oversized? I've ordered like the first oversized thing I have, and I honestly just looks like too fucking.
I ordered a oversized jumper in like large, which I'm usually a medium large. I ordered an oversized large, and it literally looks like I'm wearing a tent. Like, it's unbelievable. It's so fucking bad.
Well, you know what that means?
This has become a fashion show.
This means that while AnThran is putting on his classic pink hoodie, we are going to be saying goodbye. Listen, before we say goodbye, I do want to have one last word, which is obviously thanks to all the gentlemen who have been here. And where did YouM3 go? I was literally alt tab for like 5 seconds. Is he?
He's gonna change. He's putting his. There you go. It's his oversized
all right,
shirt.
Yeah, we got the fashion show going.
Oh, you meant an oversized shirt?
Yeah, no, it's supposed to be like an oversized.
Oh, that's garbage. Literally, just put that in the back of the cupboard. Honestly,
it's brand new, but it might go in the trash.
Listen, YouM3, we're sending last.
Is this the shirt that you spent £100 on? You said that you did a shopping spree. £100.
I bought multiple things, man. I didn't just spend it all on one shirt.
How much was that short? How much?
Like 20 quid.
That's reasonable.
You can
Probably
take it
could have
back.
spent the money better somewhere else, but
You can take it back.
He
It
probably
fe-
would have spent it
honestly,
on
it
poker.
feels nice. It's just too fucking big.
You could have gone to Pinnacle.
Listen,
and used
boys,
code Bet10.
Everybody in chat, get ready to raid Maui Snake's stream because we'll be going live with its server time very shortly. Thanks everybody who watched the major. Thanks everybody who did a fashion show at the last second. And thanks AnThran for coming back even after you were kicked, you fuck. And we'll be back for Blast. We'll be back for Blast, post-Blast show. Won't be post-major show. Thanks, Richard Lewis, for letting us steal the No Majors Club brand, even though I didn't even ask him.
Did you ask his permission?
No, that's it. That's the whole show. So
That's
Don't worry,
your
we got the
lawsuit,
head
not
video
ours.
producer
Yeah.
at Pr0nogo here. He can clear some shit up for us.
Yeah. We got connections. We got the connections. All right, boys. It's been a real treat watching this major. First major in 2 years. s1mple finally got his trophy. Let's fucking go. And
Let's give him a signature. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.